Signal seekers, this is your wake-up call. You've been hearing it in the noise, seeing it in the static. Are you receiving the frequency? Strange lights, lost places, forgotten stories. The signal has always been there. If you can hear this transmission, you're already part of the signal. Welcome to Backwoods Signal, broadcasting from the edge of reality.
Normally, when we think of England, we think of the paranormal experience of haunted castles, old buildings, crumbling buildings, ancient pubs, and even very ancient cemeteries. And that is the American view of England that we think of when we think of the paranormal. But tonight, we're going to get a taste from somebody who has been there and whose home is there, who's visiting over here right now, to tell us a little bit about the haunted and paranormal side of England. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Tony Hayes. Tony, how are you doing, sir?
I'm all right, bud. I'm all right. How are you doing? I seen that you haven't been well the past couple of days. You on the upper mends now?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not 100% yet, but we're getting there. That's the big thing.
Good,
Um,
good.
yeah. It's been this heat is part of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's
So,
crazy.
and I'm sure it's right now. I know people over there are getting notifications on their phones about drought conditions and um,
Yeah,
having to be careful with outdoor fires and so forth. So I imagine it's pretty hot over there right now too.
yeah, most
So
definitely. We're feeling it.
yeah. So let me ask you this: when we think of over here, when we think of haunted England, we picture the old castles, um, ancient pubs, the
Yeah,
centuries old houses, all of these things that just like we just picture a very old, archaic English world. Is
yeah.
that is that kind of an accurate view of haunted England?
So from my experience, the small city that I grew up in, Milton Keynes, I was born into a block of flats on the Hyde in Milton Keynes. And I didn't know this until years down the line, but my parents, they told me when I was a baby, I was always fascinated with this one walk-in closet, where they hung the coats and everything else. And I came to find out uh, a couple of years ago that there was an old pub there, and Dick Turpin, the highwayman, is where he used to drink. So, I always wondered, if it was a merchant of some kind, or even the highwayman himself. I'm open to the possibilities, but yeah, I've seen everything from Vikings to World War II soldiers,
Wow.
Roman soldiers, witches. Um, to to this day, I'm still very much in belief that I saw. And it this may sound a little far fetched when I say this, but uh, I'm certain that I saw what was or what I thought was a vampire.
Oh wow. Yeah. We have quite a few uh, people here in the States that claim to be vampires.
Yeah,
Uh, and I know that they, even in New York, especially in New York, at least at one point, they would have vampire balls and so forth, where people who claimed to
yeah,
be vampires would show up and just do whatever they do. I don't know. So it's not too far fetched for me. I personally have never met somebody who claimed to be a vampire that
Yeah.
manifest any signs, at least. But I do believe that it's a possibility.
Oh yeah, definitely. Whether like you said, it is a secret civilization where they're just hiding in plain sight. You know, we, we've seen it with militaries, the SAS, NSA, the Spetsnaz. You
Mm,
know, uh, the Chinese secret government. Korean Marines. They're so good at hiding in plain sight that you don't know that they're there. The desert rats in Afghanistan and the Iraqi war,
mm,
they were described as the ghosts of the sands. So to have vampires in today's society and even the potentiality of lichens, you know, werewolves as well, it's a very strong possibility, and we wouldn't know none of the wiser.
right, right. I don't know if you've heard much about it, but over here we have something we call the dog man. And some of those have been uh, spoken of as if they were like lichen.
Yeah,
Um, so the tales of the werewolf here are pretty common, but
yeah,
there's a lot. Like I think a lot of people get very confused when they mention when we talk about England and the paranormal. The first thing that pops into a lot of people's heads here is, oh, the Druids, or you know,
yeah,
they'll talk about the fairies or whatever, but
yeah,
they're limited on the scope of things. I think vampires is one of those things that they don't understand would be part of the lore there in
yeah.
England.
And it's crazy because so to really understand the vampire, I suppose you go back to the very first ever depiction of the vampire, which was Vlad the Impaler, which was, he was over in Poland, the
Mm,
guy that stood upon a castle depicted to drink the blood of his enemies and put the heads on pikes, to ward off their enemies. Um, and Poland is only a stone throw away from England. It's only a stone throw away from America, So it's, to have the possibility that vampires would migrate to somewhere like England and migrate to somewhere like America is not totally out of the question. It really isn't, because
right,
most people believe in seeing is believing, but myself, I believe there are things that go bump in the night. There is most definitely things that go bump in the night. Uh, and the crazy part about it is if vampires didn't exist, why is it common knowledge? You
right,
know, if lichens were didn't exist, why they wrote about why is there common knowledge about lichens? And it's not like it's like, oh, vampires, they hiss and they drink blood and everything. It goes into the fine details of stake through the heart, garlic, holy water and everything else. So you really think to yourself, was there a period in time where man and beast did coincide, and we were totally aware that they were living amongst us. You know, uh, we'll never know because unfortunately, the knowledge is rather lost, or we just simply don't live in that time period anymore.
right, right. I feel like at this point, you, I mean, there are some things that we have absolute proof of that
Yeah,
they do exist. You know, over here, Bigfoot. We
Yeah,
already know that there's something out there that has standard characteristics, a standard description. There have been
yeah,
hundreds and hundreds of accounts, eyewitness accounts of something that fits that description.
yeah,
So we have an understanding that those things are here.
mm,
And I think that's the way it is with several things. Like I can think off the top of my head 4, 5, 6 people who will say without a doubt that they know fairies exist. They know that the fae interact with them,
yeah,
and so I feel like when it comes to, even our current knowledge, I feel like there are those who are in tune enough that they know,
yeah,
and then there are those who may not know but can perceive, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah,
But I do believe that at one time, I think you're very on key with that, is that there was a point where all of these things kind of coexisted among us a
yeah,
lot more than they do now. Because now our intention is, if it's different, we must get rid of it.
yeah. And that really is the key point there, isn't it? Is as we've developed more as humans, who's to say back hundreds of years ago, okay, but before even America was discovered and England was sort of like the most known country along with Germany and Russia, is who's to say, that we didn't live peacefully amongst them, with uh, as time goes on, you know, more and more people get greedy, you know, and you get more people in power that say, "Hey, that's different. I'm different, but my different is a good difference, so therefore I'm going to get rid of your different because your different's bad."
Right,
You know,
right.
it's a
Even,
possibility.
oh yeah, we even do that with each other.
Yeah,
I mean, human on human hate is a real thing, unfortunately. Let me ask you
yeah.
this. What part of England would you consider the most paranormal, and why?
So there is a town outside Manchester. I've never personally been to it, but I really want to go. And they say it is probably the most haunted spot in Europe. And that's like that is a crazy claim because we're not just talking one country. We're talking several countries. And they said that the paranormal hotspot there is just so damn hot. There's been people that have been hanging out in the woods and they've seen a little girl run across, and then all of a sudden they see a black figure and
Wow.
it's running at them and screaming. And as they're running away, which anybody would, because over there we don't have the right to arms, so your natural flight or fight instinct comes in, and the first thing you think is, I'm bolting it back the way that I just came. And as they look around, it's gone. And it's like, how how do you even you try and talk about it? There's pubs, houses that have so much activity that they've had to close the pub down to
Wow.
stop people staying there because people have been scratched, bitten. There was claims of possession, and it's really scary to think,
Wow.
the
Yeah.
most haunted place I ever went to was Lancaster Castle.
Mm.
Um, and Lancaster Castle, okay, was one of the most famous spots for for executions.
Oh,
Um, and I went in there because my biological mother said to me, like, hey, I went in there, and they lock you in the cell, and they. She said I felt like so she said she felt like someone had their hands around her neck. I must apologize for the background noise. Um, but I went in there and I was like, what a bunch of hooey, yeah, all right, okay, whatever you say. And I went in there and it was a good solid 30 degrees Celsius. So it was a warm day,
hmm,
really beautiful warm day. And I went inside the castle like that, cold. I saw my breath in front of me and I was like, oh, oh, I don't feel safe in here. I said to one of my friends at the time, no, I was with myself. And all I could think to myself was my body was going, hey, get out of here. You ain't safe. And they took me to the pits where they had the sort of the executions, okay, where they'd have the people kneel over the block and slice the head off, okay,
hmm,
and it'd fall into the pit, and you could feel like people walking through you. It was just like
wow.
walking in and out of a cold room into a hot room back into a cold. And then I sat inside the prison cell where they hung some of the prisoners and chained them up,
Oh,
and
jeez.
I could feel this tightness around my wrist, and like someone grabbing my throat, to the point I started to choke.
Hmm,
And I said to the tour guide, I said, "Hey, I said I gotta get out of here." I said, "Let me out of here."
wow.
I was really panicking, and he said, "This ain't for the faint of heart." He said, this is why we tell people at the start this: if you're not ready for it, don't walk in because you ain't gonna be ready for it.
Right, right. That's definitely one of the things that would probably be very off-putting for me was to see somebody like or feel something touching me when I was in that particular. I mean, I've had things touch me before, but never like just grab me. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be a lot.
Hey, Robert, I just sent you a message there. What's happening, buddy? Um, this. So, I have a spot. Okay, and you're probably familiar with this yourself, being from the islands, Pendle Hill.
Yeah,
And for all of our American viewers that don't know what Pendle Hill was, it is the equivalent of Salem. That is where they hung, tortured, raped, quartered, burnt young women suspected of being a witch. I can walk up that hill on a clear day, and it will be cold, like you just walked into the nine gates of hell, and you are not welcome. From the get go, as soon as you reach the top of the hill, you are not welcome because
right,
you have literally walked into the nine gates of hell. And with I'm sure you're just as familiar as I am about Dante's Inferno,
yeah,
the nine circles of hell. And you know, to compare it to something that is a book of someone who says that they've been to hell and back is a scary thought, because you feel all of that hate, and you feel all of that anger, and you feel all that abandonment, and just it's a very, very unwelcome feeling. It
right,
really is, because
yeah,
it is just hatred. It is just pure hate, and that's all it is. You as gimmicky as it sounds, you know the scene in Ghost Rider Okay, where he uses his penance there for the first time, and you see the 1,000 souls screaming. That is what it is like to walk up Pendle Hill and be at the top of it. You just feel this mass, and it's like you're depressed, you're angry, you're this, you're that, and it's good if you're getting into paranormal, and if you have the money to go over to England, walk up Pendle Hill, you know. Gorgeous sight. It really is a beautiful sight. But the feelings that you get, you want to walk back down as soon as you get up there, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's there's so many places there that like you can just see it. Just even if you just look at photographs or video of the area, it resonates
Yeah,
and it radiates this kind of, first of all, very old world energy, but
yeah,
then there's this mystique that goes way beyond anything that modern people can even like. I can't wrap my head around how ancient it is. The
yeah,
only thing equivalent to that over here is actually the mountains that is not too far from us right now.
yeah,
The Appalachia area
yeah,
is of course was at one time connected with the same mountain ranges that are over there. So it's a
yeah.
very old, dark and energy in a lot of ways. Let me ask you this. There's a lot of people who've seen the videos and the alleged videos and the alleged photographs um, of things like giant doors opening in the side of mountains, giants supposedly being filmed uh, in the more rural areas there.
Mm.
The other thing is the images of what appears to be petrified stone images of giant
Yeah.
beings. I, so is this something? Is this real? Is this something that actually is happening over there and exists over there, or is this something that again we fabricated online?
So to really understand, so this is like a two-part answer of mine. So to really understand the giants, okay, so you first off, I'll start with how the giants came about. So you think to back when the Vikings invaded England, okay, and you had the giants there, okay, which I am of Greek mythology. I believe in Greek, so I Zeus is my god. I'm very much believer in the All Father is my god. When the Nords came over, there was rumors that they brought runes with them. A lot of that was due to pagan myth, the pagan spirituality side of it, and they believe that they're bringing the eternal tree and they're bringing the All Father with them. Now, to have giants to come to your lands, I've never seen personally anything, but I've heard a lot of people see trees knocked down, and there's not an excavator in sight. The weather's calm. Door wise, I've never experienced again, but I have heard people say, hey, I went through such and such, and I saw a door. I'm like, huh, that's pretty weird. I'm like, okay, where are we going with this? And they say, yeah, like I wanted to go through, but something was telling me no, done.
Mm,
But then they said, then there's this side where like you put down money for the lottery, and you know the cash payout, and your greed is telling you go for it, go forward, go
mm.
inside, let's see how far the rabbit hole goes. you know. And he said, then there's this other side of me that says, no, just go, walk away. Nothing
Mm.
good is going to come out of this.
Right.
So, to have mystic doorways and giants come in, that it is to be believed that when the original hunt happens, amongst the lords and the kings and everything else, that they were hunting giants. They were after mythical game more as opposed to game that they could eat. And
Wow.
fox. But then that all ties into the Illuminati,
Mm.
which then ties into the Templars, which then it all translates into stuff, the Philosopher's Stone,
Mm.
the Holy Grail, uh, and so many other things. The Spear of Eternal Life. You know, there is a story, to the best of my recollection, and I'm a huge history buff, somewhat in the turning tides of World War II in 1943, 1944, my years might be off. Adolf Hitler had set off on an adventure to find the spear of eternal life. And there is rumors to be believed that the spear of eternal life was the spear that punctured Jesus's lung,
Mm.
the Roman spear that punctured Jesus's lung. And Hitler was in the hunt for it because he wanted his soldiers to have long lasting life. He wanted long lasting life. Um, which again, all these relics and everything else, you know, France, Germany, England, America,
Oh, yeah.
the Vatican with the Apple of Eden and everything else, they are all very paranormal related, you know. They said that the Holy Grail, you drink from it and it gives you eternal life. The spear of eternal life, it was the spear that pierced Jesus' side as he was dying, and that grants you eternal life. The Philosopher's Stone grants the wielder who holds the Philosopher's Stone vision and wealth of knowledge and wealth in life, and he who possesses it shall find his true love or her true love. You know, it's it's all the same story, but in different languages.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the paranormal. That's what I love about England, is that the paranormal exists. So here's a story that's really gonna captivate you, and you're gonna love this one. I was out in town one day, and this thick fog came out of nowhere. It was winter, so it was normal winter fog. It's normal as Sunday happens. And I saw some guy what looked like he was in a uniform ran past me and dropped his wallet. So I picked up the wallet, chased him around the corner, said, hey, you dropped your wallet. Only for him to disappear. I couldn't see him, no nothing. And I walked around the corner, picked up a cigarette on my pack, sparked up, and I thought, damn, rather I didn't get any sleep, or what I saw really just did happen. And I saw this woman crying. And I said to her, you okay? I said, what's wrong? And she said, I just seen my husband. And I went, all right, what has he lost? Has he got dementia? Do you need help? And she said, no, she says, you don't get it. She says, I just seen my husband. I was like, yeah, lady, you told me, your husband. And she says, yeah, no, my husband died somewhat back in 54.
Wow.
She said, he was killed on a night out in his uniform. He was stabbed to death, unfortunately. And she said,
Mm.
just around the corner, actually. She said, where you've just came from. And I said to her, I said, I described his bill to her and everything else, thinking there's no way that there can be any correlation between the two.
Hmm.
And sure enough, she had this white face expression, as into someone saying, "There's no way you can just describe to me what I already know, and you don't know who it is."
Hmm.
And she said that was my husband. And to this day, I can still remember his face. I can still see his face.
Wow.
And just running after him with this wallet, you know, and I tried talking to people about it, uh, and they said to me, "No, you're just crazy. Just get some sleep. Just wash it off.
So what happened to the wallet?
So the wallet, I is crazy because I don't know. That's the thing. It's like as soon
Wow.
as I hit that corner, it was my brain just came out of this fog, and
Wow.
this fog had disappeared. And I thought to myself, all I remember thinking to myself is, why did I turn that corner for? You know, and that's when I just pulled out my cigarettes, popped one, lit it up, and just thought to myself, whatever it was, it couldn't have happened. And so I met the woman, and sure enough, it happened. And to this day, I will claim it until I'm blue in the face that what I saw that day really did happen. You know,
Wow. Yeah, that is crazy. There was one account that I remember, and I actually saw the physical evidence of this account in in a town in Illinois.
yep,
There's a cemetery called Greenwood Cemetery in Decatur,
okay,
Illinois, very haunted. Uh, and there's always this woman that appears there, very old style dress and so forth.
yep,
And one night, one of the people who do the haunted Decatur tours there saw her in the cemetery. And when he went over to the area where she was standing at, she had disappeared. But on the tombstone next to where she was standing was an old leather change purse.
down,
And he picked it up and he opened it up, and inside, the only thing inside of it was a very old dried rose. And he said it felt like he could just feel it was very old. And he
yep,
kept it, he held on to it. And so he showed it to me too. He was like, "This is it." And we
yep,
were in the cemetery, is why you even brought this up. We were in the cemetery there in Decatur. And he said, "And this was the area that I found this at."
mm,
And I thought that was very interesting that there was a physical evidence of what he
yep,
had saw there. So that's why I was asking about the wallet. I was like, wow, it had to be tangible. I mean, you remember picking it
yeah,
up, you felt
yeah,
it in your hand. So I think that's very interesting that um, in some of these manifestations, there is sometimes physical evidence, at least for a period of time. Uh, Let me ask you this, because I always find this absolutely drives me crazy, but it's a fact with no matter where you're at. But is there a case there in England that's a paranormal case that you think is sensationalized beyond what the evidence actually supports?
yes. So in my town, Barron Furnace, there is an abbey.
Mm,
Um, that stood. I can't remember the dates exactly. Um, but it's been there for a real long time. Now, inside the grounds, is there's a few hauntings. So I'll get to the first one, which in my opinion was the creepiest in my experience. So there was tall tales that if you went past the infirmary, you could hear children crying and coughing and spluttering because that's where they held Black Plague victims, and it was mainly children. So we were like, yeah, all right, cool, whatever. We'll go and check it out. So me and a couple of friends, went out, load of beers and everything else, and we're, having a good time. And we hit the gate right by the infirmary. And I said to him, I said, shut up. I said, turn the music off. I said, cut the crap. I said, 1 second. And he went, what do you hear? And you could hear this faint crying. And I
Wow.
said to my friend, I said, do you hear that? He said, yeah. He said, what? He said, what's that? He said, is someone hurt in there? So we shout out, we're like, hey, if you're in there, do you need 911? Do you need an ambulance? You hurt? Are you, if you broke anything, do you need us to come in and get you out? And there was nothing, no callback, nothing. There was just a crying. And then it went silent. So we were like, maybe someone's just playing a prank on us. And then it starts again. Same exact where most people who play a prank on you cannot replicate the sound that they made.
Right.
This was down to the pitch perfect.
Wow.
And I said to my friends, rather someone is really taking the mickey and they're really good at pulling a prank, or we're hearing something that is not of this world. And my friends kind of turned around, he brushed it off. He was like, yeah, maybe, he's like, he said, we have had a few beers. He said, maybe we're just hearing stuff. So I was like, no, I want to go inside. I want to check this thing out just to make sure I ain't hearing things. It's not the beer talking. And sure enough, we got inside and we went closer and closer to the infirmary, and all you can hear is crying, coughing, and you just hear this faint voice that says, "Help me!"
Oh,
And we're
jeez.
like, we split tail and we ran. We jumped over that fence as quick as we got in. It didn't take us nothing but a split second to get over.
Wow.
Because it wasn't just a normal help me. It was a child begging for help. And we're like, "Yeah, that's it. We're going home. That is it. There's no ifs, buts, and maybe. We ain't camping here tonight. Pack
Wow.
our stuff. We're heading back." So my second encounter in the Furnace Abbey was, there is rumors of monks walking around the grounds of the abbey and the nature walk. So this one is more widely pranked than out of any three of these paranormal experiences. So I went back to the abbey knowing full fledged, what was happening at the infirmary and everything else. I was like, hey, I'm really here to see the monks. I gotta see this. Like this is gonna be really cool to watch. So we went at night and we sat inside the grounds for maybe an hour, 2 hours. Didn't see a damn thing. So we jumped over the fence, went straight up the nature trail, and as soon as we went, we heard this humming. And I'm like, want to use humming? And we were all looking back at the other two, and we're like, no, none of us are humming. And you just hear this eerie humming, and all of a sudden, coming towards us, we just saw brown cloaks, and I was like, holy shit, this is happening. I'm like, we sat inside the grounds for 2 hours, and this is happening. I'm like, this is it. I'm like, get get the cameras out, get rolling. And they just reached a certain point and they just vanished. I was like, did anyone capture that? Did anyone get a picture? And they're like, no. I'm like, man, I'm like, that's crazy. So tell her there's another two paranormal experiences I had in the Abbey. So the third one is the White Lady. I'm not sure of her origins to be precise. Maybe she was a nun. Maybe she wedded at the Abbey and she died, and her spirit went back to her happy place. And again, we sat inside the grounds because that is where all the paranormal activity happens in the Furnace Abbey, is on the grounds. You know, it's sort of like they're bound to the grounds. You know, that is like their place of slumber, if you will. And this time we made it a little bit further past the nature trail, and we set up camp inside this little bushed in area. You walk through a couple of hedges and you're in this big wide field. And you know, we're all sat down and we're all talking, you know, and we just hear this crying walking past. And we're like, oh, you know, someone's had a bit of a do, you know, maybe we should go and see if they're all right. And we just see this woman walking down, head down, crying. And she gets to a certain point and she screams. I mean, this blood curdling scream.
Jeez.
I'm like, rather we run or we see what it is. So my friends was like, no, we're gonna check this out. You know, he was a bit ballsier out of the group, he really was. And I just remember walking closer and closer and closer, and I felt this overcoming sense of anger. Like, I just got really gnarly and angry.
Wow.
Don't To this day I still can't explain it. But as we got right before her, you know, one of my friends had bumped into me, and I said to him, said, "Hey," I said, "you know, if we're gonna do this," I said, "it's go time." I said, "I'll pace you up and down this nature walk." He said, "Hey, calm down." You know, he said, "I only bumped past you." He said, "Whoa, dude." He said, "I'm sorry." I said, "No." I said, you're trying to do something, kid." And as soon as the lady in white disappeared, I felt this overwhelming of calmness, and it's like I snapped back into it. And I said to him, I said, "Damn." I said, "That was." I said,
Wow.
"What was that? What was that?" And he said, you know, he said, "Dude," he said, "I don't know what it is." He said, "But you weren't you." He said,
Wow.
you know, I said to him, I said, "Did you feel anything?" He said, "No." He said, "I didn't feel a thing." He said, you know, he said, "I was trying to back off from you." He said, "Because you were trying to start a fight."
Mm.
I said to him, I said, "No." I said, "Come on." I said, you know, he said, "No." He said, I'm being serious, you know.
Wow.
Um, the other experience is unfortunately a young man had hung himself
Mm.
in the nature trail of the Abbey, and the rope that he used to hang him used on himself is still there.
Wow.
And we walk past it, and we just hear this creaking sound on the tree. I'm like,
Jeez.
is there an owl? Because I like owls and bats and everything. You know, I think they're magnificent creatures. And I look up to see if it was an owl or a bat, and you just see this rope swinging side to side. I'm like,
Ah, jeez.
I'm like, damn, this is happening right now.
Mm.
And I had no prior knowledge of the guy hanging himself. I know the guy's nephew, and he was good friends of mine and my brother. And you know, I think it was rather his brother or his uncle. He said, that had hung himself there. And I
Wow.
said to him, I said, I'm not so upset. Yeah, I said, but I said, I'm sure I saw the rope swinging. He said, yeah. He says
Mm.
it happens. He said,
Jesus.
I, he said, I've had people tell me they've walked underneath it and felt like they were being strangled. I was like,
Wow.
wow, you know. And I said to him, I said, I said, sorry for your loss and everything else, and
Wow.
he said, he said, just don't go back there. He said, he said, just don't go back.
I think that would be wise counsel. Definitely.
Yeah. Um, there was another rare instance in an old house that I lived in with my parents, and my second sister was born. Well, she must have been about 3 or 4 at this point. And out of nowhere, she came up with these two characters. She had one called Damon and the other one called Kara. And one had blue hair and one had red hair. So my mother brushed it off, imaginary friends, kids. None of us kids, apart from my sister, had imaginary friends. And it was only, as my sister said about Kara and Damon, I used to have 2 dogs, and there'd be like you walk through the door, you'd have the set of stairs on your left, and then to your right was like the living room. You walk on ahead was the bathroom and the kitchen, and uh, sort of like a walk-in coat hanger closet type of thing. And every night, my dad would say he used to see a black figure walk down the stairs and then walk back up them. And then my sister would wake up and say, Damon's scaring me. And my parents were like, rather, this is just really part of her imagination, or, you know, something's happening. And that was sort of like my real first taste that I was consciously aware of the paranormal.
Mm.
And one day she was sat in like this little house that my parents had got her for a birthday, and she was talking to Damon and Kara, and she said, Damon, I don't like when you do that. And I later on asked the friend of mine, the vicar, and I said to him, I said, I said, is it possible that Damon was a demon? And he said,
Mm.
Damon is typically a common name for demon. He said, and maybe
Oh,
your
wow.
sister's just, mispronouncing it. I said, well, what about Kara? He said, well, he said, well, Damon had red hair, right? I said, yeah. He said, and Kara had blue hair, right? And he went, yeah. He said, well, your sister has your my nana Blackburn's name, Lord rest her soul. And he said, is there a possibility that Kara was your grandmother looking after your sister, and Damon really was a demon? He said, trying to take over. I said,
Oh.
I said to him, I said, man, I said, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I said, I said, to the matter of fact that my sister could have potentially been taken over by a demon. Is crazy,
Wow.
really. When you pull it into perspective, and it goes back into that thing of children are more susceptible to the paranormal than what as adults are, and that's why they make such great hosts, because they don't put up a fight. They don't know how to put up a fight.
Mm.
Demons are very much a trick of the illusion to say, I'm your best friend. Just let me
Right.
in for a couple of seconds and I'll leave. And whether that be a doll, Annabelle, as we saw,
Mm.
whether it be someone like the father from the Amityville house, you know, physical manifestation, or whether it be, something else. And the great thing, and what I love about American Paranormal is that Annabelle and the Amityville house is physical proof, which is the scariest part, that demons exist. And they can and will use any means to get into you, tear your life upside down, and they won't leave until you're either dead or you get rid of them by a grace of God. Because that's all they want to do. They want to cause you harm. You know, it's crazy to think that that is a thing. You know, um, I've never personally had experiences of demons. I've heard about one rare case, where someone had said that they had been possessed. They said just
Mhm.
for a whole week straight, their mind was blank. Don't
Wow.
remember going out, doing anything. They said, I went to sleep at one moment and I woke up a week later. They said it was like someone was driving the car, but I wasn't behind the steering wheel. I was like, that is a really horrifying way to put it. That you are not in control of your body.
Yeah.
It, they said, yeah, it's like you're being used, you know. And when demons are done with you, I'd hate to think about what the end result would be, because you hear of it all the time. Kids that are so content in life, okay, teenagers that get curious, go to the wrong site, start messing with the wrong stuff that they don't understand, whether it be a Ouija board, whether they use tarot cards, or any other means to speak to the afterlife, and they bring in something that's nasty and it means to cause harm,
Mm.
stuff like Zozo. And you, there's been, as you know yourself, that throughout history, there's always been depictions of Beelzebub. The devil has always been depicted, and even to modern day society, because I'd still say it still happens these days. You still have people that say he was there. He appeared as a human, but he was there.
Mhm.
The devil is amongst us. They said, but I also believe Jesus is amongst us. And I said, well, the devil exists, no doubt about it. There is no doubt in my mind, because without the devil, where would demons come from? You know,
Right.
for
Right.
every army, there has to be a leader. Without a leader, an army isn't nothing. It's just a group of people. You know, Charles Manson, that
Yeah.
guy single-handedly managed to convince, I think, what was it, over 30 people to drink poison, because he told him it leads you to a better life. No.
Manson was definitely an interesting character and one that probably had his own demons.
Yeah.
So we had talked about in an earlier conversation off camera about a very interesting uh, piece of paranormal paraphernalia um, that I'm sure people here would like to hear about because it's so very in line with everybody's interest, uh, not only in the paranormal, but in gaming. And
Yeah.
so there is a group, a company in England who has actually produced a paranormal video game.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that.
So phasmophobia essentially has you roleplay as a ghost hunter. Okay, I don't know quite know as long as I've been playing it for about a year, and I don't fully understand the lore behind it, but it's essentially set up like if you're a Ghostbuster, but more in depth. Okay, so they say, hey, there's an entity in the property, go in, identify it, get out. But that is not where it stops with Phasmophobia because the devs behind that game actually take the time to sit down, do the homework, and say a wraith, banshee, demons, spirits, Rajus, Onryo, Onis. You're not just right there in them last two goals alone. You're not just going off Western civilization. You're heading into Japanese territory right there
Oh wow, yeah.
because of Onis. Onis Japanese feared the Oni more than any spirit because he said the Oni was a spirit of wrath. Something that not even the bravest of shogun and samurai would dare trifle with. He was as far as spirits go, he was the real deal. They were the real deal. Um, Banshees, as you know yourself, banshees are they come from old fisherman stories. Old fisherman lore, just like sirens, just like mermaids.
Mhm.
You know, if you're a HP Lovecraftian, you know, by myself, I love HP Lovecraft's books. I think he's a fantastic writer. Stuff like Cthulhu, you know, the Kraken, you know, stuff that we have proof of. Not maybe not Cthulhu, because Cthulhu is one of them things. I believe gods exist, but I don't think them type of gods exist. Nazgaroth, Cthulhu, stuff like that. I don't really believe in. But back onto the subject of phasmophobia. Phasmophobia is fantastic because you have all the real life gear. You have smudge sticks, you have EMFs, you have darts, you have video cameras, you have thermometer guns, that will help you identify a room, you know.
Mm.
As you saw in the live stream, where when our live streams, Phasmophobia, that, and I think off a side note, I think the fantastic thing about Phasmophobia is you can be so set up. You can be set up as set up can be. You can put down salt, and when it steps in salt, it shows UV. Or it interacts with something and it shows UV. But as soon as that safety switch is turned off
Mhm.
and the ghost starts hunting you, and every ghost has a different tell. Like, for example, the banshee. They say in the game, the banshee you can hear her singing or wailing, true to real
Mhm.
life. Because they say that is when a banshee is near, is you can hear the song being called for, and they
Right.
single out individual people. It's not a group of people. It was mainly to lure out fishermen that went by themselves, and they
Mhm.
heard the banshee's call, and the banshee would unfortunately take them to the watery grave.
Mm.
And then you'd have stuff like what's another great example? A demon. Take the classic demon, for example. In the game, they said to stop the demon from using its ability, which is it can hunt you at 85% sanity, which is, it's rather a mimic or a demon, is to put down crucifixes. Okay, which true to real life, demons hit crucifixes because they
Right.
fear the Lord above more than anything else. And then you have stuff like the Unreal. Unreals, I think, are the ones that hate fire. They dislike fire.
Yeah.
Uh, Actually, while I've while I'm on here, I've actually got the game on. I can actually boot it up well as I'm talking to you guys and talk you through the different ghosts that we have accessible to us. So bear with me while it loads up. Yeah, Kinetic Games, fantastic, fantastic company, and it's like you spot before. It's again that really isn't well known because it's not Call of Duty, it's not Halo, it's not all the usual triple A blow 'em up crap, Hollywood style, you
Right.
know. Um, it's I found out about this game through YouTubers, because YouTube is a great way to find out about anything happening in the game. Okay, so let's see. Uh, so we for our gods we have the Aswang, Banshee, Dayans, Dildagast, Demon, Deogen, Galu, Gorio, Hantu, Jin, Kormos, Mare, Moroi, Myling, Abake, Abambo, Orni, Onryo, Phantom, Poltergeist, Raju, Revenant, Shade, Spirit, They, the Mimic, the Twins, Wraith, Yokai, and Yuri. So right there you have ghosts from Western civilization, Japanese civilization, African civilization. These guys are so damn good at what they do. So let's say, for example, we go on a Jin, which is a Japanese spirit. And the description says a Jin is a territorial ghost that will attack when threatened. It has also been known to be able to travel at significant speed. Its strength is a Jin will travel at a faster speed if its victim is far away. Its weakness, turning off the location's power source will prevent the Jin from using its ability. So that right there, it's giving you like this is what the ghost is, this is what its strengths are, and this is what its weaknesses are.
Mm.
And that right there, just that little section alone, already gives you a great depth of this is what the ghost is, this is what I've got to know about, and this is what I have to potentially put myself in the danger of. So for
Right.
example, let's say the mimic. The Mimic is probably one of the most famous, if
Hmm.
not close to top three most famous entity. To me and you, we know it by several names, as the Mimic,
Yeah.
as the Nords will call him Loki, the god of tricks, the night god of trickery. Same thing, different name. Um, it's crazy that the depth that they've put into this game, and it really puts people like yourself and I that
Hmm.
love paranormal right on the map. It puts us smack bang in the middle, and this is like our game. This is like our magnum opus. This is our opportunity to say, yes, finally somebody is making a low accurate game about what we love, what's happening in the real world, and the potential dangers. Because I've known a lot of people to play this game and go back and read about the real life parts to what these ghosts are.
Yeah.
It's games like that really go far beyond being a video game, and it starts turning into an eye opener to the dimension that we can't see, the unspoken part of society. That, like I mentioned before, the things that go bang in the night
Mhm.
might not be somebody breaking in. It could very well be an entity, you know.
Right.
And I think the more people are aware about it over the coming years, probably well past our time on this planet, whether it is after that, and more and more people start coming forward again, where we hit this cycle of we live in harmony again with them until the cycle is broken and we go right back to the start where people don't believe in it anymore. They're slowly believing, slowly, more masses, bang, back to harmony again. And it's a vicious cycle, but to
Right.
know that we live in this world where you can walk down a corridor and not feel safe, and it's not for the reason of it's unfamiliar territory, it's because somebody is watching or something is watching, is a crazy thought,
Yeah, it is.
you know.
Wow.
And a lot of this stuff has inspired a lot of my songwriting, you know. It inspired a lot of people's songwriting. Led Zeppelin, they always talked about you know the farther beyonds, things that you could never see, places like Kashmir and the Stairway to Heaven, and they're all metaphors. Um, you know, and then you get people like Ozzy Osbourne,
Mm.
where they're like, we know, you know, that it's a real thing, and we're gonna write about it. You know,
Yeah.
like Motley Crue, shout at the devil. You know, what else are they going to be talking about? I don't think it's their stamp collection. You know what I mean? They are purposely talking about the devil. And the scary thing about the devil is the more he's talked about, the more power he gains.
Very true.
You know, that is what his power is. The more he is talked about, the more he is seen, the more he has grip over people, the more power he gets, you know. And it's crazy to think that that is a thing. I mean, Ozzy Osbourne's Mr. Crowley, which was written about Victor Crowley,
Mm.
one of the most sickest individuals that's probably ever existed in life, you know. And then you get Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde,
Yeah.
the most famous London bit of London law. And for people that don't know Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll was supposed to have been a normal man in the day and a monster by night that ate the citizens of London, and Mr. Hyde was his personal assistant. It, the story writes itself. It's a fantastic book. If you can ever find a good book about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I would really recommend it because it is a fantastic eye opener into the what happens in the south of England,
Mm.
you know, paranormal wise.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
So many interesting stories about it, those and the lore. The lore just goes on and on and
Yeah.
on. Let me ask you this because we're over the top of the hour right now, and I'm very curious before we sign off for the night. What are some resources that you would suggest people to go to if they want to learn more about the paranormal side of England?
So, um, obviously, the greatest source that I could recommend is if you have the money, go experience it first hand because you will not be disappointed. Um, After today, if you want to get in touch with me, I have a Twitch channel which is boopers_room. I live stream every now and then. Want to come in, ask me some stuff? I'll be straight and honest with you. Um, Books. The older the book, the greater it will be. Evidence. Search archives. Go on the internet. Type in archives of London newspaper from 1866. You know, uh, first ever recorded death of Bloody Mary at the Shakespeare theatre. Stuff like that. The internet is a fantastic place to find stuff like that. But I would, if if you're not in the country yourself and you're not in a accredited library that you know people like myself, yourself have been to, and have found tangible uh, law about England, um, just uh, you know, like I said, the best place I would recommend is go to the country itself. We have
Absolutely.
gorgeous lands and everything, and it doesn't just stop at England because you have Wales, Scotland, Ireland, the Isle of Man, the Isle of Wight, you know, so
Scott,
many places. You know, when you go over to England and you're searching for a peculiar thing, one thing, you'll find it just like that. You'll find it in an instant because if you're not looking for it, it'll look for you, you know, and it'll just land smack bang in the middle of your lap, like the last piece of a jigsaw that you've been looking for. So, you know, best places to go. I really would. Credited websites, credited libraries, and the country itself.
so what is
Uh,
this? We're having a question about.
Questions about Chatham dockyard deaths.
Yeah,
So to my knowledge, I don't know much about it, but I just know it was a very, very gruesome scene. I mean, up to the point where not many people would go down there. That's, you know, oh, 24 boys killed by the bus driver. Now that one, I don't know a lot on. I must admit, I'm not familiar with that one myself. Oh no, it's just they say it can be a great hot spot. Oh, oh, okay. Yeah, I'd love to read up more about that. I really would. Just to
right.
see
That sounds.
what's it about. I
Yeah, that
mean,
sounds like a very interesting experience.
I'm going back
Maybe
to
not for the
England.
boys.
Yeah, yeah. That doesn't sound like it ended up well on their behalf. Um,
That's right. You are getting ready. When are you going back?
November 19th.
Wow. Yes, you're taking my friend Katie with you, your wife.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
and so that will be a very great experience for her. I'm excited for Katie. I'm excited for both of you to be able to go and just start a whole new life over there together. How long have you been
Yeah.
married?
We are coming up to our first year anniversary on the 25th of August. Yeah, it's crazy times. We went to see My Chemical Romance yesterday. It was hot. it was really hot. It got up to 150 with the pyrotechnics. So a lot of people passing out, a lot of other stuff, but
Right,
it was
right.
fantastic, and touching, if you don't mind, if I put in a segment into the show before we leave, about regards to the suicide before, paranormal will do stuff to you, okay, that will make you feel that way. And if it's not that way, and you feel that way, reach out for help, you know. So many spirits that lost their lives, they took their own lives, that wandered this earth because they didn't do what they were set out to do, So always get help. Always get help, Always reach out to that person, whether it's a friend, whether it's the guy down at the the local store, or whatever, just always reach out for help, you know. And if you see someone who's looking down, always ask them if they're okay, because sometimes, a lot of people are not okay, and be kind to each other, That's my message to the world for everyone watching. Be kind to each other, There's enough shit happening in the world as there is. Always be kind to each other, love each other wholesome,
100%. 100%. I am very grateful for the information on this when I'm still kind of like trying to wrap my head around because I have not heard about the Chapman dockyard deaths yet. I'm very
No,
excited
neither
about
have
the
I.
idea of learning about that and digging
Yeah.
into that. So thank you for that information tonight too. I appreciate that. Um, I really love the fact that you came on and shared some stuff with us tonight, some new things that we have not learned about before, and experiences that we normally would not hear about over here. So thank you very much, Tony, for joining us tonight with that, and also for sharing about the game too, because that is one of those things that we definitely would not have heard about otherwise,
Yep.
most likely, some of us. So thank you very much for coming on tonight and
Oh, it's
sharing
been a
all this
pleasure.
information. Absolutely. And for those of you who are watching this till the very end, thank you. And remember, keep your eyes open, your ears tuned, and listen for the signal.